Did you start the countdown?
Ooh, Periscope won't. Okay. And here we go, everybody. Welcome, everyone, to Where's Your Heart? We appreciate all the viewers that have been paying attention, that have been listening, that have been sharing, that have been streaming. Always appreciate all those supporters that we have. So we thank you so very much. Super blessed to be here today. We have a topic that is near and dear to my heart today. So please make sure that you stay tuned in for our full hour. Now's the time to start to share with others. We're going to be talking about something that affects us all, either directly or indirectly. And it's a little off topic
Yeah.
to what's happening
Is
in
it
the
though?
community. Yeah, I was gonna circle back and say,
Is
but
it though?
actually it isn't, because this is actually one of the foundational things that we need to be focusing on. I would just say in society right now. So it's going to be really, really good opportunity to
Well, it's
share. Go
not
ahead, man.
just society, man. I think I think of all the black feminism that I've read, like the ones that address family, talk about the problem of the construction of fatherhood,
Yeah.
and and there's problematic shit about it from anyway. I'm excited about it. Like this is yeah, this is the
Let's,
thing.
it's going to be
So
good. It's going to be
so we're
good.
doing gratitude right now, though.
Yes.
What are you grateful for, man?
So I am grateful for. Well, first I need to make sure I share this in the right
Oh,
place.
you
So
do. All right.
I'm
So
getting that right.
I'll do my gratitude, but I didn't have anything prepared. So, uh, I guess I'm grateful right now. My kids are texting each other, and I keep getting dings. My kids are texting each other because they're making food and leaving leftovers, and it's just really entertaining to me. I guess that's one thing I'm always grateful for. But right now, like my kids both landed new jobs on Friday. They're
Mhm.
really excited. It's just fun to watch the two of them launch, and so yeah, thankful for all the folks that helped that happen. Like raising kids is man, it takes a lot, and a lot of people.
I
Um,
bet.
but I'm also just like every time I see them right now, I'm like, holy shit, these people are real.
Mm.
They turned 18 and they didn't just fucking cut me off, you know.
They didn't mess
I
that
get
up.
I get to play with them like now, like it, I get to watch them do all the things,
Mm.
and hopefully I can remain detached enough that I'm like, oh no, oh yeah, you know, um, as they make
Uh,
mistakes I made, you know, but like, yeah, it's fucking awesome. So there's my gratitude.
that's good, man. That's good stuff. And it's interesting because I have not been blessed with fatherhood just yet. So, but I do have a father. So, from a gratitude standpoint, though, so two things. So, I've had the opportunity, the blessing to be able to travel to a lot of different countries in my lifetime. And one of the things that we know for people who do travel outside the United States is in different countries, a lot of people don't drive or even have automatic transmissions in their cars. And so I'm grateful for the fact that I learned how to drive a manual transmission in my dad's 1986 black two-door Ford Tempo. I just dated myself. I just dated myself, but that's how I learned how to drive. And it
Yep.
was, my parents were divorced, and so my dad would pick us up, or we would stay at my aunt's house on right off of 71st Street on the south side of Chicago.
Mm.
And there used to be a drive-in on the south side where he would take me, and that's where he would take me to learn how to actually drive. And I remember those Sundays, how I used to look forward to those Sundays so much, just to spend that time. So every single
Mhm.
time I go to a country and I have to drive a manual transmission, it takes a good 5 or 10 minutes for me to get back into it. But
Yep.
I'm grateful for the fact that I learned how to do that from my dad. And on top of that, when I tie a tie, it seems simple and it seems
Mm.
like a small thing, but every single time that I go into a meeting or a business meeting, or I have to wear a tie, I think about the fact that I actually learned how to tie that tie from my father.
Yeah.
And my father was a bus driver for CTA, or Chicago Transit Authority. And so he had to tie a tie. So I remember watching him when we were sharing the same home, and he would,
So you carry it with you.
yeah, I carry that with me. So I'm very, very grateful for those two things: learning how to drive
Mm.
a manual transmission and learning how to tie a tie from my father. Yeah, man. Yeah.
I love that.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff.
My, just for the record, mine was an 81 Volvo 240.
Oh man.
Yes.
So here we got to get some shout outs. We have some of our regular listeners. So we have
Awesome.
Lauren Washington. She is chiming in from New York City. How you doing, Lauren? Thank you very much. Look forward
Glad
to
you're here.
connecting a little bit later. Got my brother, Mr. Gerard Legrone, Janine Rogers, talking about, yes, the stick shift. That is exactly what it was. It was a stick shift. You're right, Janine. Thank you very much for chiming in. So yeah, man.
Love
So we got a good topic for today. We have a really good topic for today. But before we even get into that, so let's talk a little bit about last week, man. So
Mhm.
what's been on your mind and on your heart this last week?
So I mean, last week was kind of the last week of vacation for Sarah and I, so that was a big part. And a lot of it was prepping to protest here in Albuquerque.
Okay.
The Albuquerque's on the list of places the feds sent extra folks, and it's a bit of a goofy one for a number of reasons. Everyone keeps claiming all these issues with crime here in Albuquerque. Crime is actually down this year, so that's a false, like, that's bullshit. But I mean, facts don't matter. We're in a post-fact America, apparently. But there was also this element of the Albuquerque Police Department had been so problematically violent with killings that we had called the feds in, like, what, 6 years ago,
Mhm.
and they're still dealing with the repercussions of having to have the Department of Justice evaluate everything and go through transformation. And from at least one friend of the family on APD, it's producing some results, which is good, like, yay. But it exposes the problem with just simply reforming our notions of police, I think, instead of just simply tearing the whole thing apart and saying we have to start over. That, the racism that is just simply part of a name like police that began with capturing slaves is problematic. The patriarchal notion that we always have to have power over somebody, that we can't create alliances with the people that we serve, that's problematic. So I mean, there's just thing after thing, watching our guest from a few weeks ago, Bo Braxton, the stuff that he does, like, that's the kind of stuff that we need more cops doing coalition building with the people that they're like, yeah, I'm going to end up writing you a ticket, but we're going to talk first.
Yeah.
And, we're going to figure this shit out. So there's a lot there.
Yeah, well, and you and I talk offline about this a lot too.
Yeah.
I reimagining public safety is a real thing, and I
Yeah.
think anyone who talks about innovation and who wants to grow and wants to be better, I mean, that should always be a part of the conversation.
Yep.
So I think reimagining public safety is something that should be at the top of the list. And what I don't understand though is why a conversation around reimagining public safety becomes such a toxic thing to people. Like, I don't even, it doesn't make sense to me, right? If there's a certain segment of the community, if there's a certain group, if there's a way to be better, let's just make it broader than that. If there's a way to be better, why would we not want to have a conversation around that?
Yeah.
Um,
And again, like, the bits that I'm hearing there, that the undercurrent that I'm hearing is that question of, if how many millions of Native Black Americans have said, this shit is fucking us up,
hmm,
why wouldn't we listen? Why
right.
wouldn't basic compassion dictate that we must hear this and we must entertain that there's a possibility this is true and that we need to examine it from this perspective?
Hmm,
Um, like, it's just, evidence is overwhelming. So
hmm.
we got all that. So I went to the protest Friday night, and it was
Okay.
really neat to be a part of. This particular one was put on locally by the Red Nation, but so New Mexico is unique because it's got so many native groups here, and no, most of the groups here in New Mexico actually live on pueblos, and they'll be very clear that no, this is a pueblo, not a reservation. Even though, like as far as the U.S. government might be concerned, it's not. But the identity is intact for a lot of these groups, and so they're very active. And it was neat to be a part of that. The BLM folks were just as supportive of this particular march. We had a march 3 days, Saturday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There was a protest each day. They remained peaceful. The one Friday, apparently the riot police had been called out and were prepping, and then the rain dumped. So the story is, now, I don't know if this is true or not, but the story is that because we were able to march the full loop downtown and everything, but it without getting harassed by the police. But then the New Mexico Civil Guard shows up, and that's actually one of those like potentially really dangerous and violent sticking points locally, because that's the group that shot the guy here in town,
Right.
or somebody who wanted to be affiliated, but sounds like he technically may not have been affiliated. But like it just shit goes sideways because you got people tromping around who want to act like they're soldiers. They're not. It's just the bottom line.
That's an interesting
So
comment. Interesting comment. Well, and I
it's
didn't say that because I have a really good friend that was in a very special part of the military.
yeah.
He says that all the time, and he's a real soldier that did a lot of real things. So
Yeah. Well, and there's, I mean, part of the problem with those kinds of formative experiences is they become part of your identity,
mm,
right? And so then it's a question of how does this identity show up and when do we need it as a society?
mm,
Um, and again, I always circle back to then why on earth do cops respond so differently to those anti-mask groups that show up with all of these arms and things, and they don't get anywhere near the shit that a group of unarmed protesters get.
mm.
Like again, statistically, this is happening, and it's problematic. This can't be the way it is. And also, I just always wonder why people who want to talk about rights for their guns and stuff uh, to show up against tyranny aren't showing up when the cops are beating and permanently disfiguring people who are unarmed. If that's not tyranny, I don't know what the fuck is. So
Well, I think it's like anything else. We utilize it when it fits us. You know what I mean? Like I think a lot of us do that for a lot of different things. But you're right. I mean,
yep.
we're talking about overarching gun rights and the ability to actually carry and be armed. That should be universal. Should be, but you know how I feel
I
about
don't
like
think it should be,
theory
but
and practice.
that's just me.
I do, I do. But that's a whole nother show. We'll definitely have a show about that. So my last week, it was a bit more. It touched home for me. So
Yeah.
so I was in the kitchen with my father, and I don't know, I was making oatmeal or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And I remember looking down at his shoes. He was wearing house shoes, and
Mm.
I asked him. I said, "Why do you have on so many socks?" Because his socks just look really puffy. And he was like, "Oh, I only have on one pair." And for the first 10 minutes,
Oh.
I didn't think. I was like, okay, like I completely dismissed it. But then it came back to me. I'm like, well, that's a problem because if you don't have on 5 pairs of socks, then your feet and your ankles are extremely swollen.
Oh,
And
Torian.
so I went in the room and I was like, hey, take off your shoes. And lo and behold, like, the beginnings of diabetic neuropathy was starting to set in a
Yeah.
little bit. And so um, that was hard to watch and take in and see, but it was also kind of another area that I'm like, okay, we have to address this too, right?
Yep.
And so this week has been really interesting for me, just in looking at that, and now looking at kind of a dual. I don't want to say challenge, but two things that we're dealing with as far as my father and my mother from a caregiving standpoint. So um, yeah, that's a short story, but it actually ties into what we're going to be talking about today with our
Mm-hmm.
topic around fatherhood and what that means. And I'm not a father, but I do have one, and it's interesting because my parents, I'm a child of divorce, and believe me, at the time they certainly needed to be divorced. Um, but it was still a traumatic thing to go through. And
Yep.
so I've always had a different type of relationship with my father because I saw a lot of things, a lot of violence growing up. I saw him perpetuate a lot of things in our home where he was supposed to be the person that was the provider and the protector. And again,
Mm,
I'm being factual right now. I'm not pointing blame, and we have a good relationship now. But at the time, just trying to process all those things. I mean, I remember one time trying to protect my mother. I don't think I've ever said this in public before. Um, when I was coming of age, and I actually stabbed my father
mm,
in the stomach. Trying to protect my mom from physical violence. So that's just the tip of the complexity of the relationship that we have, even in
yeah.
this healing journey that I'm on right now. And so seeing where he is right now from a health standpoint, it just it's causing me to find different ways to connect. So this topic that we're going to be talking about today is really going to hit home for me, as I know it will for you too, because
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
actually a father yourself and you have children and stuff like that. So
Well, and I don't want to let you off the hook on this either, because you also like managing to walk the line with our fathers when I don't know, I'll speak for myself here. Like when I have to reconcile the fact that like the man that beat me with a belt when I was 4
mm,
is the same man that taught me that it was okay to cry
mm,
and gave me the space to follow my heart in arts.
mm,
These are not manly things.
mm,
But he understood that. And it's that I don't know, for me, I phrase it as the challenge of like being able to point to the behaviors and say, no, you done fucked up there. And at some point, well, I'm still learning how to forgive him for some of that. I think I'm farther along in that than I think I realized,
mm.
but how to not demonize him, um, and have some chance at reconciliation. Like that's the challenge that we have. And then the challenge if for me the challenge then becomes as a father, yes, but
Right.
for you it's the challenge of you're doing the caregiving for him. You're
Well,
holding that
well,
safe space.
I'm getting there. We're definitely getting there, but I'm trying to. But from a healing space standpoint, yeah, for sure.
Tori, Tori, I'm not letting you off the hook on that one.
Go ahead, go
if,
ahead, go ahead.
if you're the one that looks at something and says, "What the hell is that?" We need to deal with this. That's caregiving because you're holding space for it.
Okay, that is fair and that is true. But that has kind of always been the role that I've assumed. That no one has asked me, but that has always
Mm,
been the role that I've assumed. Honestly, in my relationships, romantic relationships, and particularly with my immediate family as well. So
yeah,
it's something that I'm working through because you can't be everything to everybody. And
yeah,
then how do you hold space, healing space for yourself when you're in the process of healing and trying to show up better and more holistic as a man? But then at the same time, you're trying to lift those that you have in your sphere of influence up too. It's not easy. It's not, and it's something that I
no,
think we need to talk more about. And if we want to be candid about fatherhood, I know we have to bring our guest on.
yeah, yeah,
Um, it probably is one of the reasons why I don't have children today. I think
yeah.
I'm afraid. I think I'm afraid. Um, I don't want to perpetuate forward some of the things that I saw growing up. Um, that I've seen a lot, whole lot.
And so my challenge to you then, my question is, so how will you perpetuate all the awesomeness that you bring to the table as a father?
Well, first I have to be a father first.
No, I'm not
That's
convinced
kind
you
of the
do.
easy part, though.
I'm not sure you do. Like I'm not saying fatherhood's the only way to break these cycles,
Mm,
but the question is like when we say I'm afraid of perpetuating the evil that I bring to the table or the like shit that I bring to the table, we also we say we are not going to perpetuate the light that we bring to the table.
yeah.
And that's not okay because you got a hell of a lot of it, and I know you shine it in a lot of places. But how do you shine it out there for kids? Like, there's one question that I have.
Oh well, I mean, I love children. I mean, these days, I guess you got to say that not in a weird way, but I know that's not the case.
No, because I've
But
seen your nieces in the
yeah,
office there with you. Like,
yeah. I
so
mean,
you do this shit,
I
man.
love children, man. I mean, to me, because I'm a big kid myself, to be quite honest with you. So I relate to children. I like to act silly. I like to be playful, And but they're, to me, they are the physical and human manifestation of hope, and
Oh,
potential. And so when I see it and I'm interacting with them, they any and everything is possible. And so that's how I try to show up. That's how I try to talk about people, and show up for people. But yeah, I do think that, it's different when they're your nieces and nephew. And after 8 or 9 hours, I can be like, okay, this is great. Here you go. I'm going to go take a shower and then I'm going to watch television and go to sleep. So I don't know, man. I haven't really explored it too much, but I
it's
do
not
think,
different.
you don't think it's different?
No, because actually, in many ways, the like differentiation that you have with those kids is part of what we have to work to establish as parents.
Okay. Okay. Well, so
Like,
let's bring in
let's get
our
Trey in
guest.
here.
Let's bring Trey in, because there's another element to fatherhood as well, and that, partnership and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
we're gonna bring in our guest. Our guest is a friend of mine, a brother of mine. Known him for 25 years. My line brother, my fraternity brother, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated.
Y'all are on the line together too?
Oh man, he's Trey.
Yeah.
I'm number 8. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And SS No Limit Soldiers. I got to set us up right.
Oh,
I'm a man, Mr. Terrell Marshall, better known as TL. What's up, man?
there he is.
And they put me on the line already. How y'all
And as
doing?
we should say, the host of the Frontline Stereo podcast too. We gotta.
Thank you so
We'll,
much.
we'll,
Right.
to,
I
we,
got so
we'll
hype
toss
on
the
the No
link on
Limit
there.
stuff. So I got so hype on the Sigma stuff. You're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I mean, come on. He has us.
Great conversation.
TL has us on his show. Like you've been on there several times. I've been on there. Like, so just to be clear, like you got to check out his podcast, folks.
Absolutely.
Um,
Head to the
more
front
good
line
stuff.
with TL. I'll actually be co-hosting this Thursday. Make sure you
Nice.
check it out. It's an
Yes, you
amazing
will.
frontline. So we talk about frontline topics, and it's right in your face, and we get right to it. So please make sure
And
you
I'm gonna
check it
put
out.
this out there, Royce, because Royce is he's so modest. My highest watch show and listen to show is the conversation with a white guy. Royce is the white guy I had the conversation. I'm just putting it out there, man. That's
We
gonna
all
happen.
do better when we come together. I'm just saying. I'm gonna throw the
Yeah.
Torianism out there, and then we're gonna pull it back to fatherhood. So Trey, tell us
Yeah.
your experience with fatherhood, man. I know
Thanks,
that,
man.
we've talked about this over the years, but you have a unique experience. So run
We
it
do.
on us.
I do. So I'm a father of 2 young men at this point. One 19, the other one 16. And I'm also a person of divorce. We can't talk about my situation in fatherhood without talking about divorce. Um,
Yeah.
I
Go
can't
ahead,
believe
man. Go ahead.
this is going to be a sensitive topic for me. I actually haven't spoke about this in public. Those who are close to me have heard this story and know this story and know the struggle that I've had with my 2 boys. That divorce, as you said earlier in the show, is a very traumatic experience. Traumatic for fathers. I definitely want some people to become some dadvocates after the show, to make sure you're speaking with people who can help change the perspective for how a father feels about his child.
Yeah.
There's definitely been some conversations in the man side of things where, you've seen guys that didn't take care of their children, and women used to say, step up and make these men
Yeah.
step up and become great fathers and be in their children's lives. And I think from the male side, we've had that conversation, and now we have a plethora of
Doesn't mean
men.
it needs to stop, but
No, it doesn't. Not
Yeah.
at all. We don't want it to
Yeah.
stop. We've had that conversation. The conversation that we haven't had, and this is where I get tough on women, is it's now your turn to step up and start talking to some of the women and females that are going through this very traumatic experience and say, hey, I know you might not enjoy the company of your spouse or soon to be ex anymore, but you have to, your children has nothing to do with what's going on. And for me, my story is a father who no longer has direct access to his children. It's been about 6 years now.
So you haven't seen your children. You haven't seen your sons in 6 years.
I haven't had you're talking about growing. You're talking about waking up every morning in the house with them for their whole life up until about 15. for
Mm.
my oldest son and about 12 for my youngest son. Well, almost 12, 11 at the time. You're talking about me waking up every morning, seeing them, me interacting with them, me being their basketball, football, baseball coach,
Yeah.
me taking them to school, me picking them up from school, just me being the everyday father that that fathers strive to be. And not only is it important for me to be the type of father that I was being, because I grew up in it's very important for me because I grew up in a single parent household
Yeah.
where I was raised by only my mother. My father was not a part of my life. So this was a piece of me that was near and dear to my heart. It was, I'm going to break the cycle. I'm going to make sure I'm a part of my children's lives and they'll have a male figure to model themselves after that'll be positive and give them a influence for them to be able to work and to be able to function in our environment, in our world today.
So what happened? What happened?
So what happens is divorce happens. We know over 50% of marriages end up in the divorce. I was married very young. I got married at the age of 21 and had my first child at the age of 20. And 15 years down the road, me and the wife just didn't grow together. I'd say that's the term I like to use. Being married as young as we were married, or being together as young as we were together. We were together when we were 19. And when you start to grow and you notice that you're not growing together anymore, you're growing
Yeah.
apart, you see things differently. um i'm I'm not a person that likes to be stuck in a box. You guys know that. I don't like to be
Yes, I
stuck in a
do.
box.
What box?
I mean, exactly what box. I break all the rules when it comes to trying to box me in. And I was being asked to be placed in this box. The dream life for my ex was the multiple kids, the dog, the white picket fence, the house, and this is the house that we're going to stay in forever and grow up in it forever. And when we pass away, this is the house that we'll give to our children, which is amazing to do, especially in the Black community. It's okay that that's your dream, but that's not my dream. At 21, owning a home was a goal, and the box was checked. So the next move is to give you a better home, sweetheart. I want to give my kids a better home. I want to make sure we have rental property. I want to make sure I continue to strive and grow professionally and do the things that, be not just a provider, be a good provider, a great provider, not just be a role model. Like I said, I don't want to I didn't just want to be a father that participate. I want to be a father that innovates. And that's what I did. In my community, I started the Youth Sports Association for my kids to play baseball, football, and basketball. They didn't
Wow.
have it in our community.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I was the person that did that along with other men in the community. But I was the acting president for the 5 years that it existed, until we turned it over to the Park District to run. So I wasn't just trying to be a dad. I was really trying to be a super dad. And when we started our divorce, have you ever heard of this show called Divorce Corp?
Of course. Very
Wait,
entertaining.
like the old one?
I've heard of it.
It's about 8 years old.
Yeah.
It's not a show. It's like a movie or a documentary.
Oh, okay. This one,
Divorce
no.
Corp.
I haven't heard of
No,
this
no,
one.
no. You mean Divorce Corp, like Divorce Corporation?
You got it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I would ask anybody who is watching right now to look at it on YouTube. It's about an
Yeah.
hour and a half long because I watched it because we talked about this, and
Mhm.
it definitely
And
turned me off to, I mean, it just everything.
like, I don't want to get married.
I
don't
mean,
wanna-
that was a lot, man. So explain a little bit about what they were talking about, because a lot of that stuff, because I've never been married before, I've never heard of, but it seemed very traumatic just in the process
Oh,
itself.
God.
So as I started going through my divorce, my lawyer at the time said you should watch this this movie called Divorce Corp. It'll explain a lot of the things that we might encounter, some of the things that we might go through, and I just want to prepare you for the worst, so you can, so you can be strong enough to endure what we're about to endure. And Divorce Corp talks about just the corporation of divorce, how lawyers obtain money, how the child support system works, and just how they continue to kind of drive and extend a divorce, and how that extension of the divorce causes financial drain. You're drained financially, you're drained emotionally, and that's the business of it. That, like, divorce is a business, and that's some of the things that I flat out experienced going through my divorce. I mean, like, just about everything they talked about in Divorce Corp, I experienced. Originally, when me and my ex-wife decided to split, we were semi-amicable. No, she wasn't happy because it was my decision to move on, because we just weren't happy. We went through a 3 or 4 year stint where it was just consistent arguments and consistent traumatic exposure to our children. Definitely nothing I would want them to see. And after a while, you go, I have to think about my children. This is not even about me and you anymore.
Mhm.
This is about the visceral hate that we have going on in our household. They
Yeah.
don't see love anymore. So this can't be a healthy environment. And when you try to move past that environment, of course, there's pushback, because that love is still there. By all accounts, my ex-wife, I loved her with all of my heart, faults accepted and all. I mean, who gets married for 15 or 10 plus years and don't expect to stay married? It
Yeah.
just didn't go that way.
So
So
how did all of that affect your relationship with your son?
well, like I said, originally we were speaking, we were on semi-amicable terms where I would, still come over to the house and do all the things that I would normally do. Basketball, they played for the basketball team that I coached. They played on the baseball team that I coached. They played on the football team that I coached.
Oof, that's
So
tough,
it
man.
was these were all things that we continuously did. But once the divorce papers were filed and the realization of this is going to be a full split, that's when I didn't see him come to practice, because I'm not just in the house and I'm saying jump in the car and let's go to
Oh.
practice. I'm no longer in the house anymore. So I show up at practice and they're not at practice, or I give them a call and they'll answer the phone, but they'll tell me I can't talk long because mom wants us to go do this. And just and then when I wanted to do an activity with them, like go outside of the regular things that we do, like playing baseball, basketball, football. Let's say I want to take them to a game. Those things I would be able to do in the house. I'm like, hey, I got Bulls tickets, so let's go see the Chicago Bulls. I got enough for all of us, so let's go. Well, all of us turned into just 3 of us because it was just me and my 2 boys. And I said, hey, I want to take the boys to the game. And she was, well, I wanted to do this. I was like, just let them know and let them decide, and you let me know. Then the decisions became more and more of, they don't feel like it. And then at the age they were, they both had phones. I can call them, I can talk to them. And it turned into, oh no, mom didn't tell us about that. And you hear this continued story, and I was like, okay, this is not going to be good. This is going to turn from an amicable divorce into the one thing that really would hurt or touch me in a way that would upset me. My divorce was not about a house, not about a support check, not about any ability to take care of her or my children. It was literally about it became about a visceral hate about revenge, and the one thing that I can do to upset you, I know I can take your children away from you. And that continuously happened as we moved along throughout the divorce. Again, there was multiple agreements put in place in my divorce. The only agreement that wasn't put in place was how long or when I could see my children.
The visitation agreement?
Yeah, the visitation agreement was one of those.
Yeah.
Illinois laws have definitely changed during the time I was going through my divorce. This is a 5-year divorce with only one thing on the line, just the ability to see my children.
Yeah. So where's the heart space on this, man? Like this is all fear.
Man, I still got some PTSD, man.
Well, yeah.
It's definitely some healing. You guys said it's the healing space, right?
This is a healing space, yes.
All right.
Because this is the first time I've actually publicly spoke about this. Only people who have been very close to me have heard or experienced anything of the such. I mean, you don't know. Like the thought is that guys go through this, and it's just another guy going through something. He don't
Yep.
want to really take care of his kids. He's just trying to skip town and figure out a way not to pay child support. Well,
Yep.
that's not the case all the time. There's a ton of guys out there who really love their children, really want to take care of their children, be involved in their lives, and just continue a healthy relationship, but sometimes can't because mothers turn the idea of you're leaving me to you're leaving us.
Yeah. What's the thing that hurts the most right now about this?
Oh, absolutely. That the fact that I don't see my children. I mean, I've had to endure watching my oldest son graduate. I was able to see him graduate grammar school, but I wasn't a part of his proms or graduation. High school graduations, which is things I feel I deserve. I've put in. I sat down at the table with them and helped them with math homework. I've sat down and talked to teachers at the parent teacher conferences, and I feel like I've been that type of father, so I deserve to see these type of accolades come through. Same thing for my younger son. I know Tori, and this is gonna. We talk about this off and on. Your sister's actually married to my son's favorite teacher. So your brother-in-law, I'm able to still see them from a distance and love them from a distance, but it's those type of things where I see Novi in a picture with my son graduating from grammar school, and it's those type of things.
Yeah.
Like I should be in that picture too, and those are the things that I miss.
That's hard, man. Because I know, Royce, you have a story around divorce and fatherhood as well.
Yeah. I mean, mine went differently. And I mean, mine runs the danger of the accusation from the other side of the fence from my kid's birth mom is that I took the kids away from her. And I mean, we got a job in Providence, and so we moved, and I had full custody. I tried to still preserve, but I mean, the differences are like I fought like hell to preserve, like to make sure that they did video chats with her, to make sure they did phone calls with her and stuff like that. When the kids made the decision to, they have their own relation. They're old enough now, being 19 and 21, that I guess it was a few years ago though that our daughter decided, she's like, I don't want any more contact. And I was like, no, you have to go to these video chats because it's important for you to have a relationship with your mom. So I was like, fine, you have to go to a therapist and you got to make that decision with the therapist. Like that was my solution. I was like,
were there more video chats in this agreement or situation?
None of it was in the agreement because I ended up with full custody. There were a lot of circumstances there that were really hurtful to the kids, and a lot of mental health issues that were really hurtful. And I mean, I have my own work to do. Like I'm just this last January, my therapist discharged me from therapy, and I've been in therapy since 2008, like literally since the divorce began. So it like we all had our issues. Some of them were just much more destructive and hurtful to the kids, and those were on the other side of the fence. So that was like I think that's the thing that I'm just not sure people understand is that when we are the parent with the privilege of having custody, it's our job to advocate for the kids to see the other parent. It's our job to help it. Sarah and I paid for the social worker to sit with the kids when they were visiting their birth mom, because we're like, well, they have to see her and they're not safe with her without supervision. So we'll pay the social worker to sit with them. Like, so it's
that relationship there.
Yeah, to me that, and so I think it's part of our responsibility as custodial parents, but also like, this is the mess that we're in with this stuff. And I knew, like, if we went to court, I knew the chances of me getting custody, even with all the documentation I had of all the problems, it was slim to none.
Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how
dismal.
So how does it work in court? Like, even from
good
let's
luck.
talk about like
As a
child
dad?
support. Yeah, as a dad.
Right,
As a dad,
dude.
just sit on it and go. Like, that's it.
I mean, I had a judge.
I was the caregiver. I was the homemaker at that point. and it was still wouldn't have mattered.
So
Anyway, go ahead. Go Tia.
Dude, I walk in the court. My judge, oh my gosh, my judge, she was, she has you can go, if you just Googled her name, it made me cry when I Googled her name because of the amount of complaints that she had in family law court against dads. Like, she just had a complete bias against dads. And I swear to you, I spent a year and a half with that judge without my case being moved none on the needle, literally a year and a half, probably 2 years, 2+ years with it not being moved on the needle. My lawyer ended up telling me, I heard your judge is retiring. We won't put any more motions in until she retires. Once they assign you a new judge, I'm sure you'll have a more favorable point of view and a favorable argument. And literally, soon as she retired and we got our new judge, everyone's seen the case for what it was. And
Yeah.
but the damage was done in the first 2 years. I know you talk about when you're the caregiver and you have a responsibility to make sure there's a relationship there. The term that came to mind was parental alienation.
What is that? What is that? What is that? I don't know what that is.
So I'm going to explain it. But parental alienation came to mind because it's something that's not even recognized in the courts, in family law court, when you're going through divorce. So parental alienation is basically when you remove one of the parents from the children's lives, and it basically alienates the kid from knowing who that other parent is, or only hearing one side of the story, or not understanding. I mean, divorce is already traumatic. Like you said earlier,
Janine mentioned it earlier.
Right. You had your own things that you had to deal with that was very traumatic. So they remember what it was like together when things were happy and when things were sad. And now they have one story, only one group of people to see. And 9 times out of 10, if that's the hurt party or the non-amicable party, the other party is definitely going to be spoken about in a negative tone. So you completely alienate the kid from the non-custodial parent, and then you talk negatively about them. So that's what they develop. Kids watch your parents.
Well, and it's a system of microaggressions too. Like this was something I had to guard against, and I mean, I don't know how good a job I did. Like, I don't know. I'll be blunt. Like, I don't know how good a job I did, but it's the microaggressions too, of the planning stuff specifically to conflict with the things that the non-custodial parent wants to do with the kids. So the kids have a horrible choice that they have to make. It's stuff like that. Like some of that is way beyond microaggressions, but it becomes a systemic thing, and it is a very difficult case to build, I would assume, because it has to do with a multitude of social interactions with the kids. But it's an awful thing.
Well, as a person who doesn't have children, I'm not very inspired. Like, what? How do you? I mean, I'm just saying. After watching that and doing some research for the show, it kind of confirmed some of the things that I've seen and I've watched. I mean, I have,
but that's just confirmation bias.
Okay, and that's true. I work in that, so you're absolutely right. That is confirmation bias. You're right.
There it is.
But here's the thing, TL. Like, TL, would you have kids all over again?
Absolutely. Look, I'm currently remarried,
which is also confirmation bias. But anyway,
there you go. See, don't be afraid to love again. Not everyone's like your ex.
I'm not afraid to love, and my ex was great. She, I understand what you're saying.
In my case, my ex was terrible.
but I mean specifically around fatherhood, right? Because you guys are speaking about it from the standpoint of actually being married and being in an institution and being divorced. There are a lot of people who have children, and I have a lot of friends that are women who have children. They're like, listen, this dude is nowhere to be found, or they're in the picture for 10 years and then something changes and then they bounce, right? So what does that look like just from a fatherhood standpoint is what I kind of want to talk about.
The day that we found out that we were pregnant with our eldest, I sat down and just started crying. And the part that I talked about was the fact that at 24, my whole life was going to change. Like, that was way sooner than I had planned. I knew that I wasn't ready to be a father. I look back now and I'm like, holy shit, did I fuck all sorts of stuff up? Like, bluntly, it was awful. But one of the things that I never talked about the reason I was crying was that the kid's birth mom didn't know her own father because her mother had cut them off from, or cut her off from her father. And that was the thing that immediately I knew I was at risk. And every day of my life, I would be scared that she was going to take my kids away from me.
Dude, that's
Yeah.
deep.
So I mean, that right there, like that for me was I lived with that fear every day.
Let me tell you what I went through. And this is by no means this my mom's gonna be, if she's watching it, she's gonna be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just said that. But it definitely crossed my mind when I again I'm an only child, grew up in a single parent home, raised by my mother. My father wasn't around. When I was going through my divorce and I stopped seeing my children and I seen the things that my ex was doing, I asked myself, is this what my father went through? And I know I have an amazing mother. I know I love my mother to death. She's amazing. But I had to think, could my mother be this way? Is this the reason why I don't have my father? Is some of these things that I experienced at that time, that's the only thing that I could cross my mind, that could cross my mind. And it got to the point, wow, even her being my rock at that point and holding me up while I was going through that very traumatic thing, dude, a part of me became upset with her too.
Yeah, well, and that's a legitimate question. So I'll kind of attribute that to myself. Like I look at the dynamic of my mother, who I'm caregiving for, and I love her to death. I wouldn't be who I am or where I am because of the things that she did. But as a man, like some of our conversations and how we interact, I think to myself, there's no way I would be your spouse. Like I wouldn't want to, the way we're talking to each other. I'm just being honest. I mean, the way we're talking to or the way you're talking to me, or the type of communication, it doesn't feel good. But that's why this kind of space is so important to me. That's why healing is so important to me.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in it. I grew up in trauma. I grew up in pain. And then when I moved to the suburbs, I was in a different type of trauma and pain, right? But still trauma and pain nonetheless. But I had gotten away from the place where I was supposed to feel safe, and that was at home. For me, I'd rather be out in the streets. That's why I like riding my bike. I'd rather go into bad neighborhoods that were racist or where I didn't even identify with people, because when I was at home in my own bed, that's when I would be crying. Even to this day, tonight, when I'm in my father's house and my parents are speaking and their voices go up, I automatically wake up. That's how deep this trauma can be. And I'm old, really old. And so
dude, it's real.
It's a real thing. And so it's I don't know. So beyond that.
So I'm going to jump in right there, partially because James Mosqueda, our guest from last week, just threw something up on the watch party on mine. He said, waited a while to have children, was the best decision ever. We got time to know each and love each other. And then when we had Nico, we had a super solid foundation built to add him into. And I hear that story a lot from older parents. Mine's a little different. Like I know the parent that I am now, like the big point of grief I had, I just read Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. Big point of grief I had toward the end of that book was the moment when she says, if you want to raise good kids, be the adult that you want them to grow up to be. And it just broke my fucking heart, because I know that for the majority of their lives, I was not the parent or not the adult that I wanted them to be. And it just hurt so badly to look at that and think, I fucked so much stuff up. Like the amount of just patriarchal bullshit that I had going on internally that I was perpetuating for my family it was horrible. So I guess there's the question, like, because parenting really is that easy in some senses. Be the adult that you want this kid to grow up to be,
But do you think, and this is where, when or if I do have children, I think I'll be able to add a little bit of value, because I have been moving through a healing space for a while, and seeing the fact that, hey, like my parents, right? Like I'm so much more empathetic to what was going, even with my mom, even what I just said, right? I have a deeper sense of understanding for why that is. Just learning more about her childhood and how generational trauma affected her. And then
there's the thing.
And then my father's relationship with his father. My grandfather was abusive. He was a sharecropper from Mississippi. I didn't know him very well, but the stories that my father told me about, I mean, the things that he used to do were absolutely brutal. And so these things are being passed forward. So part of my
Yep.
fear is pushing back on it. But then I also want to be better than that, because when I do show up, I want to be in a healing space and be able to take care of things, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually, and have empathy and show that, to me, my version of manhood is not just being, hyper masculine and sticking my chest out, but it's being able to hold space in which I can hold their hand and I can cry and I can talk about their feelings, but they still feel protected and provided for as well.
Hell,
And, but then a part of me is like, I don't know if I can really do it. And the cost of trying to find out candidly is kind of terrifying for me.
yeah.
It
I mean,
is.
bluntly,
Yeah,
I'll
I
tell you.
completely agree with it being terrifying.
Yeah, if it's not terrifying, you're not paying attention.
Right. I say, dude, having a kid at 20, having a kid at
Oh,
19 years old.
yeah.
My thought was, I looked at my mother. My mother had me when she was fairly young. I'm not going to date her or myself, but she had me as a teenager.
Yep.
and my thought was, I'm doing good because I'm not a teenager having my son. I'm out of the house. I'm not a teenager, but I wasn't quite grown. I wasn't an adult yet. And just like you said, Royce, some of the things, be the adult, and was I the adult that I needed to be? A majority of me feels very confident that I was the man that I want my boys to be. However, I know as a husband and being able to handle situations that are not always favorable to a relationship, or just the tough times, the peaks and valleys. In the
Yeah.
valleys is what I'm talking about. Did I act accordingly or properly all the time? No, I absolutely didn't. I had to
Yeah.
mature into that, and those are the things that I still hope to.
They hurt, man. Those
Yeah, they
things
do.
Look, you mean the things
are.
that you could have done better
Oh yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Man, look, you'd be surprised. I've set out. I literally moved to Florida. My decision to move to Florida. I'm no longer in Chicago. I grew up in Chicago, born and raised. Spent the majority of my life there. I've been in Florida here for about 4, going on 5 years now. And my decision to move to Florida came around my divorce. I literally how hard it was to be literally 15 to 20 minutes away from your child, and you being told, because you're in a current litigation, to not add to the litigation itself, like by creating events, meaning don't go see your son because your son's going to go home and tell mom that he's seen you, and then mom's going to say he's threatening or saying this to my son, or
I don't want to go
that
through that.
and the other. And dude, literally coming to Florida, I literally sat down at a table smoking a cigar at a cigar bar, and we were having a conversation. I overheard someone talking about this, and this is when I was really angry. I was like, just mad.
I remember those times. I remember that.
I did not like women right now. And you know what? Before I finish this story, I want to say something to women right now. I started off by saying, the dads have had the conversation. The men have had a conversation that we will continue. Step up, be a father. It's the times where I've literally been on trips with my wife and her friends, and I listened to some of her single friends sitting at a table going, "Oh yeah, this is so and so's my little guy's father. I don't want to put him on child support, because if I put him on child support, he'll have a right to come and say he gets visitation hours. So I'll stay away from child support and keep the visitation to myself, because I don't want him around him." And those are the times where I go, "You're doing what? And why are you going to be this way? And why don't you think your son needs his father in his life?" And this is where I urge women, because of multiple times of me hearing this conversation, it's time for you guys to start having a conversation with those mothers who feel bothered by the fact that they're no longer in a relationship with the father of their child. It's not them leaving. I didn't leave my children. I left a toxic relationship. And I bet you if we were able to speak to my ex right now, she'll tell you she's better off for it. Now, she's probably still too angry to admit it and allow me to move forward with my children. But if there's someone who knows my ex-wife that is watching it and watching this show right now, and in the sound of my voice, this is where I go have a conversation with her. I'm fine. I'm healthy. I'm good. I would like to move forward with my children. That's always my plea. I know you didn't know this, Torian, but that's the reason why I started the Frontline Stereo podcast.
I didn't.
I started it for my boys. And the reason why I started it, because I'm looking to become one of the biggest podcasters or biggest radio personalities, too big to ignore. So my children can say, that's my dad. And
Wow.
saying that's my dad
Wow.
will allow them to come and reach out to me again.
Wow. That's powerful, man. No, I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that. That's well, anything I can do to help you, for sure.
Oh, you already doing it, Ben.
But yeah, it's. I mean, this all of this is touching the nerve for me. I mean, it's. Yeah, because Lauren said something. She said you should always be the person someone wants to be married to.
Mm-hmm.
And
David's comment earlier was.
Oh yeah, David. So David and I, Dave Price and I, we actually went to high school together. This is my man.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about just, you know, thinking of just for the point of view and holding the honesty here, you know.
Yeah.
And it's hard, man. Go ahead. What are you gonna say?
I'm not gonna gloss over the moment that TL was just sitting there. Like, what is it that you long for? Like,
just a connection, man. Look, I mean, I had my relationship with my boys was that of the thing that I longed for with me not having my father in my life.
Yeah.
I played basketball all the way through college. I wanted someone to come to my games and cheer me on.
Yeah.
I wanted someone.
Every time you look at the stands, where's Dad?
Yeah,
I feel that.
And I
too.
knew my mom, and I knew my mother was working, but I wanted to have that parent that would do that for me. So I wanted to make sure I did that for my children. I didn't have the father to show me how to work on cars or the male figure in my life to show me how to change light bulbs or change ceiling fans. Or I hear a lot of my friends, they talk about the times where they were on the roof or doing something with their dad. I cleared roofs with my dad, or I painted a room with my dad. I do a lot of that with my uncles. I had male figures in that sense, but I wanted to have my children say, I remember I did this with my dad. Yeah. I wanted to, that's what I long for. I don't care. I do care about some of the events that I've missed, but I care more about the legacy that's not being right now. That's the growth of the legacy that has been stunted. Because I feel like I definitely want to create a legacy within my family. And I know my youngest son, oh my gosh, he's the person who cares about his last name. He understands what it means to grow a family. And I have that same care for my family. I don't want to just be another Marshall. I don't want us to be just another family out there. I want us to, how you hear about the Wayans brothers.
Yeah. You want legacy? You're talking about legacy.
I'm talking about legacy, and you have to be connected to your legacy in order to build that. And I just really hope I have the opportunity in this lifetime to still build that legacy with them. Right now, I can say I've accomplished some things that I'm very proud of myself for, and things I've grown into a space a lot different from the 21-year-old guy that had his first son, where I was scrounging and scrapping to make things work. I've grown into a space where I have something that I can actually share with you guys now. I've learned how to maneuver and operate in this world. I learned how to code switch, which is something that you're going to have to learn how to do. I've learned how I've obtained some assets for myself, and I want to show you how to get them early. I was a 21-year-old with a house. I want to show you how to do that too. So and not only will you be a 21-year-old with a house, you'll be a 21-year-old with a house in the house that I'm going to pass down to you. So
man, I want to help all about the generational wealth.
Right. So right now that legacy is stunted. So if you ask me what I'm longing for and where's my heart at, my heart is in not having my legacy available to me right now.
Man.
So I'm struggling with that because when I read that book and it really hit me, I mean, and I'm the custodial parent, right? Like But like I've lived with the fear that as soon as they turned 18, they were going to be like, "Nah, Dad, you were a bozo for too damn long and leave." Like I
We
figured
out.
that was what was going to happen, you know. So
Mm.
I still live with the fear of that. But it one of the things that I'm sitting with from the book, because like truth be told, I was not the adult that I wanted my kids to grow up to be until very recently. Like literally maybe sometime within the last 5 years, really only within the last 6 months that I'm like, I feel like I am solidly self now, right? I'm fucking 46. Like, let's be clear. But something that I really had to sit with, or that I'm sitting with and trying to coach myself into, is just noticing the amount of time that I remember my dad as an adult after I was 18, and the role that he still played in my life, and my mom, and the growth that I've seen from them over the years. And I'm trying to like leave space for that to take hold in myself, because I feel that like shit. I can't fix all the things that I screwed up. That's where my guilt is on that thing. But like
Mhm.
so how do I have the relationship now that I wish I had had 20 years ago
Mm.
with my son, right? How do I bring up the things? I mean, I had to have a conversation with him a couple months ago as I realized like some of the shit. I'm like, look, man, there's some things I think I screwed up when you were a kid, that probably were traumatic, you
Right.
know. But I can't bring them up because at this point, if they weren't traumatic, it's only going to be more traumatic for me to bring it up to you. So like, as you're doing your work, when it comes time, if that pops up, bring me in. Like, we'll sit down and we'll have the conversation.
I'm with it, Russ.
So
But
so
that's I think the kind of stuff that we're not done yet, man, and the kids aren't
Yeah,
either.
not at all. Yeah, it's like you got to chip away at it. It's a little bit at a time, man.
so what would you
Yeah.
leave as we kind of wrap things up from a show standpoint? I mean, we're gonna do our after show, so I'm
You
gonna
talking to me?
ask. Well, yeah, for the both of you all, just as fathers, and I mean, I can add my little bit just as a son who's in a healing space with a transitioning father.
Yeah. And
But
there's the other thing, like your relationship with your parents, all the transformation you're going through right now, it gives me hope too. Like we are not done yet, man.
no, we're not done, man. And I
Not at
love
all.
my father. Like my dad, we simple stuff. Like you talked about painting. Like yesterday, we painted his laundry room. And just doing little stuff together. We try to go
Yeah,
attempt to
that's
play golf because I can't play golf at all, neither can he. But just we'll go but
that's
it's the fact that we're
isn't that
doing
stuff
things
that you
together.
value.
We're creating those moments, and what I've learned is as I've started to heal and I've kind of circled back home after 20 years because I haven't been here, well, 18 years. I left the Chicagoland area. He's not the same person. I'm not the same
Mm.
person, and so we're trying to meet each other in a healing space. I'm not as I'm definitely not. I'm not angry anymore. I don't show up in that way at all. But I'm a lot more. Hey, tell me. I'm asking about him and how he got to
Mhm.
where he was. And it's funny because one day, real quick story. This is about 6 or 7 weeks ago. I came home from the office
Mm.
and he was sitting on the couch and he was looking at the television and he was just like, um, he was just like, I've never had a chance to find out who I was as a person. And this came out of nowhere. My father just said this to me. He was like, I always wanted to be an architect. I wanted to go to school. Um, no one ever asked me. No one even when I was a kid even cared, and so I didn't know how to do it myself. And then he started apologizing to me, and I was tired. This was like midnight, but I realized that it was one of these moments to where he was almost like kind of passing the torch to me. He was like just getting it all out, and
Do it.
that was uh that was a hard night, man. So I'm trying to just hold that space as we're going through the last, not days, but cycle or phase of life right now. So there is time, man. There is time. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that if I have to wrap things up, just leave your viewers with anything, is become a dadvocate. Definitely think about the guys who actually do want something to do. I mean, when they're deadbeat dad, you'll know it. It'd be really clear. They
Yeah.
won't be around. They won't be anywhere to be found, and they'll just keep things quiet and happily or unhappily pay child support or dodge child support. But for the dads that are
And let's be
fighting,
clear, we're not advocating for that kind of a dad.
No, no,
not
they're
at all.
whack. They're whack.
Or that kind of parenting.
They are whack. It's
Yeah,
still
yeah.
some of those guys out there. That's why we like you
Right.
said, we still have to have the conversation as men to
Yeah.
say, hey, dude, that's not what you want to do. Could you imagine growing up like that or anything? But no, mothers and friends of females and that in your female circle, start having that conversation. So when that situation comes about and you hear your friend saying, I ought to put him on child support because of this. If the man's taking care of his child and doing the best that he can and taking care of his child, that's his moral responsibility. Because if you were together and that's all he had to give and you were happy with him, then that'd be all he have to give. Don't do it now because you're not together and allow a unjust, which we know is an unjust system, come in and rule over a guy's legacy, because that's what they're ruling over, his own legacy. So become a advocate. Females have the female conversation, and the guys out there that's going through some of the things that I'm going through, know that you're not alone, because that's what I've been told multiple times. You're not alone, and we got to stay strong, man. We got to bond together and figure out a different way to make this thing change.
All right.
Well, I mean, I also want to introduce right there too that this isn't just a gendered thing. Like, I've seen this happen with plenty of folks in the LGBTQ community. Like, this is more about the roles that we adopt as we endure the formation or deformation of relationship. That we have to take care of each other. And when people are going through that divorce, like, it's one of the most traumatic things the human animal can endure. So yeah, like we gotta, yeah, it's awful. So.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I definitely appreciate it. TL, stay on the line, because we have our after show coming where people can check it out behind the paywall in a few weeks. Got to throw that out there real quick.
Next Monday, it's going to be up next
That's
Monday.
right.
I swear to God.
Behind the paywall.
Man,
Yeah,
look,
bring a
y'all
post.
moving along, man. Y'all moving along. Way to
Man,
go.
making it work, man. But thank you. I'm gonna put you in the green room for a second. All right.
All right, man.
Yeah.
All right. Oh man, that was a good conversation. I have a feeling that this is going to be a long post show as well. But it's good. It's good. It's good.
A lot here.
So what about for you? Any last words for our viewers and listeners on fatherhood?
No, I think it's really hard to hold self when you're going through trauma. And like, part of me wants to leave space for the fact that, like, we make some bad decisions, but the only thing worse than making a bad decision is continuing to fucking defend it and uphold it. And it's one thing, so I mean, I don't know. And maybe that's the most important thing we can say sometimes is, I don't know, but we gotta move forward, and we gotta find one. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. How about you?
Man, there's a lot to this for me. I mean, as someone who has had a very up and down relationship, but it's been appreciative just to even have a father, because I do know that there are a lot of people who haven't. And for me, everything comes down to healing, man. And I know my dad did the best that he could at the time and where he was, and he's doing the best that he possibly can now. And I tell him, I appreciate it. I love him and I respect him for it, because he's even circling back, even in his relationship with my mother, which is still toxic, but it's better than it was. And trying to hold a better space for her as she's a lot worse off from a health and a psychological standpoint than where he may be. So I appreciate that and I respect that. So to me, it just starts with the healing space, man. And I hope that from a father's standpoint, that even if a person hasn't been who they wanted to be, or like Lauren said, the person that someone would want to marry up until this point, that they find just little ways and little nuggets to kind of move forward, because it's all about growth, and it's about being able to emotionally show up and hold space for people that we have in our life. So that's my center, man. So I hope that people can take something away from this conversation with that.
Yeah,
that's it. And so with that, we got to thank everybody for watching, listening. Check out Where's Your Heart, the YouTube channel, and be on the lookout, because we have a lot more coming over the next few weeks. Thank all of you all for checking it out, and we'll see you next week, same time next Monday. All right.